everything you need to know about Julius Caesar, Act 2, Scene 1. This is kind of a long scene, so we'll probably have to divide it into two in order to cover and talk through everything that's going on. It is the night before Caesar is assassinated, and Brutus is alone in his orchard super late in the night because he's been kind of tormented by wondering and thinking through what he should do if he should conspire against Caesar and join Cassius's assassination attempt. So this is the night before March 15th, the Ides of March, which is when Caesar gets assassinated. So he starts off in his orchard, and he calls for a servant who's Lucius. He says, "What, Lucius, ho?" Now, people think that's funny, ho, but it's more of an exclamation, like, "Hey, I cannot by the progress of the stars guess how near today." So just looking out at the sky, he doesn't know what time it is, but he knows it's approaching morning. "Lucius, I say, I would it were my fault to sleep so soundly. When, Lucius, when? Awake, I say. What, Lucius?" So he's getting annoyed here, right? Because his servant is sleeping pretty good, and he wants him to come do some stuff. Lucius comes in, "Called you, my lord." Brutus says, "Get me a taper," which is a candle, "in my study, Lucius. When it is lighted, come and call me here." So he wakes up Lucius to go light his candle in his study so he can go in there. Lucius says, "I will." And so now Brutus is alone, and he's talking out loud, and we know he's not crazy. It's a soliloquy, so we know what he's thinking in his brain. So this is what he says. "It must be by his death." So Caesar has to die. "And for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn or to rebel or kick against him." I don't have a personal reason to do that, but for the general. And the general there means the general population of Rome. "He would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question." So it's not how he is now that Caesar is a potential problem. But when he gets a crown and becomes a dictator, how is that going to alter who he is? That's Brutus's big question. "It is the bright day that brings forth the adder, and that craves wary walking." An adder is a snake, and a bright day is like a sunny day. So, right, when it's a sunny day and it's hot, that's when the snakes come out. So when the snakes come out, you can't just go tromping through the brush, right? You got to be aware. So crown him that, and then I grant we put a sting in him, that at his will he may do danger with. So this is an analogy comparing Caesar to a snake. Like when the snake comes out on a hot day, he's dangerous. When Caesar gets the crown, that's like a hot day for Caesar, and so then he's dangerous as well. "The abuse of greatness is when it disjoins," meaning separates, "remorse from power." That's kind of a tough line, right? So greatness is abused when remorse, feeling bad about something, is disconnected to power, because you can abuse power, and if you don't feel bad about abusing power, then that's dangerous. "And to speak truth of Caesar, I have not known when his affections swayed more than his reason." So this is interesting because Brutus doesn't have like personal examples for this. He's like, when I'm speaking truthfully, I don't know when his emotions have been stronger than his logic. "But 'tis a common proof," in other words, it's a typical situation, "that lowliness, or being humble, is young ambition's ladder, whereto the climber upward turns his face. But when he once attains the utmost round, he then unto the ladder turns his back, looks in the clouds, scorning the base degrees by which he did ascend." So this is another analogy, and I don't know if you've heard the saying, climbing the corporate ladder, but the idea here is you work your way up in a company and you kind of crawl over people, and by the time you get to the top, you kind of ignore the people that helped you get up to the top. So this is his thought here. It's typical. People act humble and restrained when they're at lower positions, but as they climb up, once they get to the top, they kind of kick at the ladder that they use to climb up there. "So Caesar might do that. Then lest he may, prevent." In case he does, we got to stop him. "And since the quarrel or the argument will bear no color for the thing he is, fashion it thus." In other words, Caesar doesn't do this now. So we can't look at him now and say, like, this is going to happen. What we can do is speculate. And that's all Brutus is doing here, is speculating. So think of it this way, that what he is, how he is now, augmented means to be made stronger, would run to these and these extremities. So once he was made stronger, he's going to go nuts, right? And therefore, think him as a serpent's egg. So back to the snake metaphor. Think him as a serpent's egg, which hatched would as his kind grow mischievous, and kill him in the shell. Right? So the snake metaphor. What danger is a snake egg? Not much. Once it's hatched, well, then you got to watch out. So instead of waiting for that, let's kill him before he hatches. That's his argument or his logic for taking out Caesar. Lucius comes back in. The taper burneth in your closet, sir. Searching the window for a flint, I found this paper thus sealed up, and I am sure it did not lie there when I went to bed. And he gives him the letter. We know from Act 1 that these are the letters that Cassius wrote to Brutus in order to kind of convince him that other people are wanting Brutus to act. So Lucius brings him this letter, and so Cassius's plan is kind of working. Brutus says, "Get you to bed again. It is not day. Is not tomorrow, boy, the Ides of March?" So he's asking, reminding the audience, tomorrow is the day that Caesar is assassinated. Lucius says, "I know not, sir." Brutus says, "I look in the calendar and bring me word." So Lucius goes out again. And now we get this weird little sentence here that says, "The exhalations whizzing in the air, the meteor, like a meteor shower, gives so much light that I may read by them." So again, this gets into this whole mystical fate and signs that Shakespeare loves to use, so that there's this meteor shower in the skies that Brutus is able to read this letter using. So he opens the letter and reads. And so you got to imagine here, he's reading the letter aloud, and then he's thinking about it. And then he reads the letter aloud and thinks about it. So this is what the letter says, and it's in quotes. "Brutus, thou sleepst, awake and see thyself. Shall Rome, etc., and so forth, speak, strike, redress. Brutus, thou sleepest, awake." So that's the letter. Not much to it. "Such instigations have often dropped where I have took them up." In other words, like these are, instigation is this, like a request or an urging, do something. So people have asked me to do stuff and I've done it. Okay. Then he reads again, "Shall Rome, etc. Thus must I piece it out." So he has to figure out, what does that exactly mean? "Shall Rome stand under one man's awe?" In other words, shall Rome be in fear of one person? What Rome? He doesn't recognize that Rome. "My ancestors did from the streets of Rome the Tarquin, who was a king of Rome that was driven out by one of Brutus's ancestors, the Tarquin drive, when he was called a king." So Brutus is remembering what actually was brought up in a previous act, that he had a ancestor that did something to prevent Rome from being under a king. "Speak, strike, redress." Continues. "Am I entreated to speak and strike? Should I say something and do something?" Redress is like to re-put together, right? To redress something. "O Rome, I make thee a promise, if the redress will follow, thou receivest thy full petition at the hand of Brutus." So I will do what you ask me, if I speak and strike, if we can put Rome back together again. Lucius comes back. "Sir, March has wasted 15 days, and then there's a knock. So we now know it's the morning of the Ides of March, which is when Caesar's going to die. Brutus says, "'Tis good, go to the gate, somebody knocks." Lucius leaves, and then again Brutus speaks out loud again. "Since Cassius did first whet me against Caesar, I have not slept. Between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first motion, all the interim is like a phantasma or a hideous dream." So in other words, since Cassius has gotten me started thinking along these lines, I've just been a mess. I have not slept. Before, thinking of something and doing something, it's like a dream where you're kind of just going through the motions as the turmoil works you over in your brain. "The genius and the mortal instruments, the brain and the body, are then in council, and the state of a man, like to a little kingdom, suffers then the nature of an insurrection." So your whole body is all worked up, trying to deal emotionally and logically and thinking through the situation. So he's been really torn up about this whole thing. Lucius says, "Sir, 'tis your brother Cassius at the door, who doth desire to see you." Brutus says, "Is he alone?" Lucius, "No, sir, there are more with him. Do you know them?" asks Brutus. And this Lucius says, "No, sir, their hats are plucked about their ears, and half their faces buried in their cloaks, that by no means I may discover them by any mark of favor." So in other words, they're like hunched over. They got their cloaks up over their head. They're like sneaking around in the dark, right? So Brutus tells them, let them enter. So he only knows Cassius is there. This is what Brutus says then is a reflection of this. They are the faction. So he knows they are the people there that are going to kill Caesar. O conspiracy, shamest thou to show thy dangerous brow by night when evils are most free? Are you ashamed to be out and about even in darkness where you have to still hide yourself? O then by day, where wilt thou find a cavern dark enough to mask thy monstrous visage? Visage is a face. It's like if you have to hide in the dark, what are you going to do in the daytime when people will see you and be suspicious? Seek none, conspiracy. Don't seek to hide yourself. Hide it in smiles and affability. Affability is kindness, gentleness, friendliness. For if thou path thy native semblance on, if you walk around like you normally do, not Erebus itself were dim enough to hide thee from prevention. Erebus is a dark place between Earth and Hades, or Greek mythology for like a hell. So nothing, if you're doing it like this in darkness, nothing's going to be able to hide the darkness of your deed. You need to be doing it for the right reasons. So this is when all the conspirators then come in and Brutus has conversation with them.